For a brief period, the riots in Portland stopped, and no one really knew why. Some speculated that Antifa was going around setting wildfires, a wildly unsubstantiated claim, though we do know there were arsonists. We do know that one of the guys who got arrested was a Black Lives Matter activist. There's no evidence that Antifa or Black Lives Matter was going around and doing this. So why did they stop? Well, I speculated that it was because Oregon State Police who had been brought in were deputized by the feds. So if they arrested someone, that person wouldn't be charged at the state level. Federal prosecutors would come in. We then saw this outcry, what was it called? The Portland General Defense Committee or something said that the FBI is going to people's homes and they're getting charged with things that are similar to their state charges. Well, the riots came back. Interestingly, though, when the riots reemerged, they went to an ICE facility. Quickly got crushed. You see, the feds aren't playing around, and the feds are operating under Bill Barr and Donald Trump. Right now, Portland police are being deputized as U.S. Marshals, which means those rioters running around in Portland who are now trying to avoid federal facilities and are just smashing up local businesses will be facing the same prospect. Mike Schmidt, I think his name is, the DA in Portland. He doesn't want to charge people. He says, well, we don't have evidence. We're going to let them go. And then they go out and riot again and again. And it doesn't stop. So I don't know exactly why they stopped when those fires were happening. It is kind of strange. But before that, we had Oregon State Police coming in and making these arrests. When the riots came back, went to the federal facility, snatched up federal charges. Rioters then went local. Now the local cops are getting that deputization. And I suspect these people are going to be running scared, but we can only wait and see. We have this story. Earlier, I had to focus on the breaking news of that woman who crashed into the Trump supporters, seriously injuring some Trump supporters. Although they're not in critical condition or anything, they're going to survive. They like broken bones, I think. We're seeing this story from the Daily Mail. NYPD clash with Black Lives Matter protesters standing among diners in Manhattan as Seattle descends into chaos and Portland erupts on the fourth night of Breonna Taylor unrest across the U.S. Oh, come on. Breonna Taylor unrest? The unrest never stopped. OK, we had that brief lull in Portland, but that doesn't mean all of the rioting just ceased. It was still ongoing in many other places. Some people were speculating the reason the Portland riots were slowing down is because these loonies were going to other places, like they were going to be in D.C. on the 17th. That whole thing got canceled. And guess what? They were supposed to do the siege on the White House siege, whatever, got canceled. Why? They straight up said because of Trump. They were scared of Trump. So I tell you, as we enter this election, who am I going to be voting for as the riots don't seem to be stopping? Well, the only evidence I have that the only thing I can see is that Trump and the Republicans are willing to shut them down and Democrats are not. The only reason we ever see anything happen to these people is because the feds move in. And so these people decided not to go to Washington, D.C. for their 50 days of unrest. Good, I guess. I mean, look, if you want to engage in nonviolent protest, that's fine. And then we had Adbusters, the organization that was rallying for this, change it from the White House siege to what did they call it? The nonviolent improvisational jazz, because they realized what it meant if you're going to besiege the White House. I think they were scared of federal charges, but we've got more news as well. Governor Ron DeSantis has just rolled out a new bill that has a ton of very serious charges for people who engage in this kind of behavior. Now, I don't agree with a lot of it. Actually, I think I disagree with most of it. And so we'll go through that and break down what we have here in this segment, the incoming penalties and the way we stop these extremists. Because I want to show you something else, too, from the New York Times. You see, there was a guy during the Louisville protests for Breonna Taylor who started shooting wildly, and he shot 2 cops. He got charged with wanton endangerment. That's it? For shooting wildly? He could have killed people. Well, that's it. They're saying he wasn't trying to kill people. He was just firing a gun randomly at cops during a protest against cops. I think I can see this guy's intent. The reason I bring this up is because one of the officers, the only charge in the Breonna Taylor case against one of the officers had to do with wanton endangerment because he was firing wildly into the building and he hit the neighbor's house, nearly hitting somebody. They freaked out over that and said, it's not enough. The charges are too weak. He's only being charged for the shots he missed, they said. Yet this guy who went out and did this, it was worse. Waving a gun, shooting it wildly, hitting 2 cops. Wanted endangerment. Man, to me, that's incredible. I want to highlight something here in this story from the Daily Mail. And I'm not going to get into the depth on this story. NYPD clash with Black Lives Matter protesters standing among diners in Manhattan. Seattle descends into chaos and Portland erupts. The reason why is, dude, how many times do you need me to come out and say, we get it, riots happened, cops came in, people started fighting, cops got arrested. And this is another story where Black Lives Matter protesters were apparently standing among diners. I guess they're trying to play it safe. I don't know what that means, whether or not that they were actually harassing the diners. Maybe they were standing there and talking to them. And, it's not at the point where you'd call it harassment or anything. But the cops moved in. This keeps happening. OK, it keeps happening and something needs to be done about it. Multiple arrests made in downtown Portland, unlawful assembly. And this is what I was basically saying before. When they went to the ICE facility, they got rounded up quick. When they go out and protest just at the local level, they get released. Well, now we have something. Now we have a solution. Portland police deputized as federal officers ahead of protests. This is from KVAL, Eugene, Oregon. They say members of the Portland Police Bureau's rapid response team were deputized as federal marshals on Saturday morning ahead of a planned rally by the Proud Boy group and expected counter-protest. Interestingly, this happened before the Proud Boys even showed up. Quote, I want violent individuals thinking about the enhanced penalties they may face if they harm a Portland Police Bureau officer. And it's likely not going to come from any of the Proud Boys or right-wingers. Deputizing the police officers will allow federal prosecutors to charge allegations of assault on a federal officer to anyone who attacks a deputized Portland Police Bureau officer, state police said. Portland officers have been serving on the front lines of nightly protests for months, sustaining injuries and encountering unspeakable violence, Hampton said. If I am to send them into harm's way this weekend, on my authority, I am going to ensure they have all the protections and authority of an OSP trooper. You see, Oregon State Police have already been deputized. Well, it's only fair that the local cops get that as well. I will say it could be a little alarming to hear this. And the reason is we're going to give more power to the federal government. We're going to make more laws. And that can be kind of a bad thing. If it's already illegal, we just need the DA to do their job. If the problem is that the DA won't do their job and the cops are doing their job, then we need to move in, maybe Bill Barr, the DOJ or something, and get rid of this DA who is not enforcing the law. Short of that, this may be the only solution. I'm not necessarily a fan of seeing the federal government gain more power and authority, but I will say it's a very clever way to deal with this. They posted to Facebook. At 9 a.m. this morning, members of the Portland Police Bureau Rapid Response Team were deputized as federal marshals. This will allow federal prosecutors to charge allegations of assault on a federal officer to anyone who attacks a deputized Portland Police Bureau officer. We then see the quote. They say, along with the Oregon State Police, who are also sworn as federal officers. This will enable any persons who commit violent acts towards our law enforcement officers to be charged federally. The Oregon State Police and Portland Police will continue to make arrests on state charges. Those cases are then reviewed by the U.S. Attorney's Office, and federal prosecutors will determine if any cases warrant federal charges. I want violent individuals thinking about the enhanced penalties they may face if they harm a Portland Police Bureau officer. It's not even about what the penalties they may face or enhanced penalties. It's about the fact that no one's getting any penalties. They're just being allowed to romp around and do whatever they want for 100+ days. At a certain point, it has to stop, I'd imagine, right? And if this is the only way to do it, then so be it. Now, Governor Ron DeSantis over in Florida has his own solution. Governor DeSantis unveils new bill to crack down on riots, penalize cities for defunding police. DeSantis' bill is a priority for the 2020 legislative season. I don't know if I agree with this stuff, but listen, the challenge is that we're between a rock and a hard place where violent criminals are going around doing whatever they want with impunity. You've got major corporations, mainstream media supporting these people. How do we deal with it? You've got district attorneys that were funded by George Soros. That's a fact reported by the New York Times, who are not charging these people and they're letting them go. Then they go out and commit more crimes. So what's the end goal here? They're just, it's more extremism. Was that the point of bringing on these DAs who won't prosecute people? Look, man, I'm all about criminal justice reform, but this ain't it. It's not the way we're going to get it done. These people are violent criminals. These are the ones you want to be in jail. The ones you don't want in jail, the ones who are sitting on a street corner smoking a blunt or like having a 40. We want criminal justice reform in reference to non-violent offenses. But they've done the inverse. Now we still have people going to prison, going to jail because of some non-violent drug offense, which I personally don't care about so long as they're like not selling it to kids or something. I mean, there's some restrictions, right? And we have the violent criminals romping around and going free. It's backwards. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. I will say, there was a story about Kim Foxx in Chicago. She's the lady who let Jussie Smollett go. And she's been at a much lower rate. She's been prosecuting at a much lower rate than her predecessor. A large portion of that was nonviolent drug offenses. I'm actually okay with that. I actually kind of like that. So I'm with respect, I'm glad that's happening. But you cannot take that and say that's good enough. Now we'll let all these other people. No, stop, slow down. You can do it right. You can say this guy, what was he doing? He had pot or something. I don't care about that. This guy was throwing bricks at cops. That guy should be arrested and he should be in jail when convicted, right? You go to jail and then you'll face trial. But check out this law. I want to show you this new law that was proposed by Ron DeSantis. They say in Winter Haven, alongside several law enforcement leaders from around the state, the House Speaker and the Senate President, DeSantis, said the bill aims to crack down on riots and Antifa types. We have zero tolerance for violence, zero tolerance for disorder, and zero tolerance for looting, DeSantis said. And I agree with that in terms of zero tolerance. Under the bill, called the Combating Violence, Disorder, and Looting and Law Enforcement Protection Act, it'd be a third-degree felony when 7 or more people are in an assembly and cause damage to property or injury. You know, I don't necessarily even disagree with this. My question is, though, if it's already illegal, why do you need more laws, right? I do have a concern that we just keep stacking laws on top of laws. And, where does it end? Where does it end? If it's illegal, just prosecute these people. But I guess the goal here is if you've got a group of 7 people and one person throws a brick, you arrest the 7 people. They say the same penalty applies to anyone who's obstructing traffic during unpermitted protest. That I disagree with. The bill states that any driver who hits a person who is obstructing traffic during a disorderly assembly will not be liable for injury or death if fleeing from the safety of a mob. That I definitely agree with. Calling it the boldest and most comprehensive piece of legislation like this in the country, DeSantis said there will also be enhanced penalties for people who throw objects or assault law enforcement officers during assemblies. I agree with this. OK, if you were involved in a violent or disorderly assembly and you harm somebody, if you throw a brick and hit a police officer, you're going to jail. You want to talk about demilitarizing the police? It's simple. People need to stop throwing bricks and shooting at them. We ask cops to do this job because population density is expanding. It's becoming harder and harder for us to recognize our own neighbors. And that is a serious, serious challenge. I don't have all the answers. I can't tell you. Maybe people should stop living in big cities. I don't know if it's unique to us or how you get through it. But a lot of these countries that don't have a problem, like China, well, they're authoritarian. You know, they will drag you out of your home and send you to a work camp, for a lot of crazy reasons, like having the wrong beliefs. We don't do that in the U.S. We believe in individual freedom. And that means it's particularly difficult when people have a right to peaceably assemble. You now have a massive group of people that are saying, we're just peacefully protesting. So the cops come out to make sure that they stay peaceful, and that's fine. And then we have these stories from the New York Times about a dude shooting 2 cops. And what does he get charged with? Wanton endangerment. No. If you're out at a protest, okay? If you're at I'll tell you this. At least they're undercharging him because he'll probably get convicted. You overcharge and people get released. If you're at a protest, specifically calling out cops and saying ACAB, and then you start firing wildly at them and you hit 2, but I'm going to say that's attempted murder, all right? But you know what? They're not doing it. I guess it's probably better that they undercharge in that case. But let me show you this PDF. Combating Violence, Disorder, and Looting and Law Enforcement Protection Act. New criminal offenses to combat rioting, looting, and violence. Prohibition on violent or disorderly assemblies. Third-degree felony When 7 or more persons are involved in an assembly and cause damage to property or injury to other persons. All right. Well, I don't know if we need more laws for this, because if you go around smashing up things, it's already illegal, but now they could probably get the accomplices. Prohibition on obstructing roadways. 3rd-degree felony to obstruct traffic during an unpermitted protest, demonstration, or violent or disorderly assembly. Driver is not liable for injury or death caused if fleeing for safety from a mob. I get it. I do. But listen, nonviolent civil disobedience is a good thing. It is the boundary by which, where we find it acceptable. Okay? If you make peaceful revolution impossible, you make violent revolution inevitable. And I'm not even I'm not saying that in the literal sense like revolution. I'm just saying general reform. If people feel that they have no outlet for a redress of grievances to even pressure the system in any way, things get bad. They'll get more violent. If a bunch of hippies want to link arms and sing a song in the middle of a road, I think that is acceptable. I think they should be arrested for obstructing a roadway, but not a 3rd-degree felony. When we see nonviolent civil disobedience, we accept it's crossing the line, and those people get arrested, and then they get taken away and the road is cleared. I understand there's a big problem here, though. For one, we are seeing waves of people blocking streets and then beating on cars. That's why I understand the second part. Drivers not liable if they flee. I get it. I do. But now we're seeing with population density, it is very easy with social media to rally a group of lunatics to block roadways. And that's creating serious problems. I don't believe a 3rd-degree felony is appropriate. A felony charge is serious. It's like you get convicted of a felony, you can't own a weapon anymore. You can, and I think for the most part, you can't vote. You can't leave the country to many other places. Like, that's a serious thing to say because some hippy-dippy protester wanted to sing a song in the street. So I think the important thing here is keeping things proportional. Maybe it just needs to say, Class A misdemeanor. I don't know how they judge it in Florida. I know, Illinois would be like a Class A misdemeanor, which can be up to a $2,500 fine. All right, man. You want to engage in this? And you don't get more than a year in jail, and it's a misdemeanor. So, you don't get that felony charge on your life. So I disagree, but I'm not saying I know all the answers. Just that I think we got to be careful about this. Prohibition on destroying or toppling monuments, 2nd-degree felony. Totally agree with. Absolutely. Prohibition on harassment in public accommodations, 1st-degree misdemeanor for participant in a violent or disorderly assembly to harass or intimidate a person at a public accommodation. Totally agree. RICO liability attaches to anyone who organizes or funds a violent or disorderly assembly. 100%. 100%. These people know what they're doing. They're putting money in it. They're bringing U-Hauls with shields, and they have flags. When they take a flag off, they beat you at the pole. Yes, and I don't care if you're left or right. Increased penalties, a mandatory minimum jail sentence for striking law enforcement officers, including with a projectile. Mandatory minimums are wrong, in my opinion. I think it's already illegal to hit a cop. We'll arrest them and charge them for that, but I do not like mandatory minimums at all. I think it's a terrible idea. Offense enhancements. Offense and sentence enhancements for 1, throwing an object during a violent or disorderly assembly that strikes a civilian or law enforcement officer, assault battery of a law enforcement officer during a violent or disorderly assembly, and 3, participation in a violent or disorderly assembly by an individual from another state. All right, I can get that. Listen, I don't like mandatory minimums at all. I think the judge is the judge for the reason, for a reason, and the judge is going to look through the details and be like, okay. I understand what they're trying to avoid, though. They're trying to avoid lefty activist judges being like, well, you only threw 1 brick. How about a slap on the wrist? Now they're going to be like, nope, 6 months. I don't like mandatory minimums, man. I don't. I think it's very important that our legal system understands individuality, right? There are certain stories. I remember I briefly took a criminal justice course when I was like 18. It was like for a month. We learned a story about this kid who was like 19. He had an alcohol problem, and he knew that his next door neighbors were out of town. They were asked to watch the house. They had keys. The kid did not have keys, so the kid went in the house and he opened the door. He went to the refrigerator because he knew they had beer. He stole a beer, and the police were passing by, knowing this family was out of town because it was a smaller town. Saw the light, went around the back, saw the kid in there, arrested him. Because he opened the beer, I believe it was a burglary, which is a mandatory minimum. And apparently the judge was like, I am not sending this kid who stole a beer to prison for years on a felony charge for this. And they were like, nope, mandatory minimum. Now, that was a story told to me like 16 years ago. So I could be mixing up the details. But there's things like that. The judge needs to be the one, to determine the sentence, or, a jury or however it works. I don't like the idea that you say no matter what, you get the sentence. Now, RICO, that I like. These people are organized. They're in groups. Get them. Now, here's where it gets kind of weird. No defund the police permitted. Prohibits state grants or aid to any local government that slashes the budget of law enforcement services. Well, come on. Like, we have to slash law enforcement budgets sometimes. Let's say it's really simple. Let's say there's a cop driving around in like a Humvee or something. And then we're like, hey, the budget for this, or that's probably a bad example, but let's say like we keep giving cops this particular tool and we have it in a budget. And we're like, hey, this tool is kind of becoming obsolete. Let's slash the budget in this area and reallocate funds. Oh, you slashed the budget. I know. It's probably more specific than that. But I think there are legitimate times when you will cut a police department's budget. Like if the population is shrinking or people are moving out of the city, or you need to reallocate funds to other specific areas. I'm not saying defund the police the way they are. I'm saying there's probably legitimate reasons to reduce police funding. Defund the police is a political slogan about how you just don't like the institution. They're not directly targeting anything. Like, what if they were like, this fund for night vision goggles and night equipment is completely useless to us. Let's say they give up jurisdiction in some capacity for some, to the DEA or specifically to state police. Now they've got a budget they don't need that can easily be reallocated. I guess you can call it reallocate. Fine, whatever. They say victim compensation waives sovereign immunity to allow a victim of a crime related to a violent or disorderly assembly to sue local government for damages where the local government is grossly negligent in protecting persons and property. Here. 100%. I agree. Government employment benefits. Terminate state benefits and makes anyone ineligible for employment by state, local government if convicted of participating in a violent or disorderly assembly. Well, I don't know about that one, man. I mean, I understand. That's bold. That's bold. That might be a First Amendment issue right there that'll get challenged and could get a lot of this, shut down. No, here's the last one. Bail. No bond or bail until first appearance in court if charged with a crime related to participating in a violent or disorderly assembly. Rebuttable presumption against bond or bail after first appearance. Oh, man, this is tough. I don't like an increase in authority in this capacity. I don't think that we can keep people locked up before we've proven them guilty of a crime. Unless, of course, there's probable cause and they're violent. It's not so simple. I don't mind a violent assembly. If they're charged with a violent crime, yes. But if someone's at a disorderly event, I've seen people get arrested who did not commit crimes. In fact, we're going to have two journalists from the Daily Caller on the IRL podcast. Hopefully, I hate announcing guests, so I'll leave it there, who did not commit any crimes but are getting charged. Like, imagine if they got locked up and couldn't get out for like a week or two. If there was you get all these people arrested, they got to go through they got to go see the judge. That could take a long time. Now, there is still an argument that they may get locked up for a couple days, but the judge is going to be the one who says, these guys are journalists, released on your own, on your own recognizance or whatever they call it. So listen, sometimes it's good to have things like this. I would say I'm 50-50 on this. Dude, just do the RICO thing. Seriously. Charge these people with conspiracy. That I like. They're organized and they use these clever manipulative tactics to avoid liability. I'm not down for that. But I'll wrap this up by saying we are not going to allow these people to control our streets. And this is the unfortunate consequence of extremist violence for over 100 days. I warned it would happen. Blame Antifa. If you want to de-escalate and demilitarize the police, you need to come out, stop these people, and then you can say there's no reason for cops with shields because there has not been a brick incident in years. And the city's going to be like, that's a really good point. They don't need the shields. It's a waste of money. Instead, they're coming out and throwing bricks, Molotovs, and shooting police. That's going to result in cops buying more safety equipment, and I don't blame them. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. That is my main channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.